What up, everybody? In the Raising Kanan Season 3 finale, Famous had just got off the phone with the guy from the record label talking about the song 411 when the cops busted down his mother's front door and arrested Famous for the murder of Freddie Williams. This is after his mother found the gun in a shoebox and reported it to the cops. Famous hurried up and stashed the gun in the shoebox when he first moved back home. He had took it out his bag right when his mother was knocking at the door, and he quickly stashed it in the shoebox. And we definitely knew that this gun was going to come back into play at some point after Famous killed Freddie, Season 2, Episode 9, and we never heard anything else about what Famous did with the gun after. Famous actually even went a few months without even telling Kanan what happened until one day when the guilt was eating at Famous when he told Kanan what happened. Kanan went on to tell Famous to bury that deep down and to never bring it back up again. One thing we still need to consider, though, is whether that gun was registered or a burner. Keep in mind that Famous got this gun from Kanan, and it was her mother Palomar's strap. Famous told Kanan he would return the gun in a couple days. But since we now know that Famous never returned the gun, and Palomar and Kanan had already moved out sometime within the next few days after this all went down anyway, because the time we got into Season 3, Paul had already moved into their old apartment. When the cops were questioning Famous in the interrogation room, they let him know that that was the gun used in the shooting of Freddie. Famous told them that he bought that gun off some guy on the street for protection. So right now, the only evidence that the cops have on Famous is that he was caught with the murder weapon, which is a big one, and that he was also arrested in the same area a few days earlier from when Freddie was killed, and that he also went to high school with Freddie. Since all this is circumstantial evidence, this might not even be enough for an indictment, let alone a conviction. This is why whether the gun was registered to Palomar or not will be key in this whole situation. Because right now, Palomar doesn't know that Famous took the gun. She might legit think that the gun has been stolen and possibly has even reported it stolen. Either though, I don't remember the cops telling Famous anything about the gun being stolen. But if this is the case, this could have very well went down as Famous said, keeping in mind that he was living in the same apartment building as Palomar. So someone could have broke into Palomar's spot, stole the gun, then fleeced it to Famous outside the building. But since Famous only lived a few doors down from Kanan and Palomar, he could possibly also be looked at as the suspect in stealing the gun, possibly bringing Kanan and Palomar back into the storyline for Season 4. Kanan straight up told Famous that if he got caught with that gun, she was going to say he stole it. So if the cops come question Kanan and Palomar to see if Famous had opportunity to steal the gun, most likely one of them will say he did. But we also got to keep in mind that when Kanan came over asking Kanan for the knives, that Palomar gave Kanan her gun. So personally, I don't see her loaning a juvenile her registered firearm. So the Kanan and Palomar angle is the biggest question mark for me going into this case. Then we also got to keep in mind that Famous is only a juvenile, and that's why his mother was in the interrogation room with him. And cases are handled a lot differently for juveniles than they are for adults. And juveniles aren't supposed to be tried as adults, either though oftentimes they are. One thing we also have to consider is, will Famous even be offered bail? Or will he be sent to juvie to await his trial? Because if he was an adult, there'd be even a 50-50 chance if he would get bail or not on a murder case. And I don't even know if they offer juveniles bail in New York or how it actually works. At the same time, even if they offered him bail, most likely his mother's not going to be able to afford to bail him out on a murder case. And the only way Famous would be able to get out is through Kanan or Rock bailing him out. And Rock said the first time Famous got locked up that she wouldn't bail him out. Then we also have to consider the old man from across the hall who heard the entire conversation between Freddie and Famous before Freddie was killed, including Freddie telling Famous that he knew it was him, saying his name specifically. This same old man was questioned by Detective Garcia in Season 2, and he said he didn't know anything about the shooting. But at the same time, this is the same old man that called the cops when Famous got arrested the first time. We also got to remember that Famous recently went to church, according to Lou in the booth, spitting his confession in the song 411. I had said before that song alone was not going to be enough to get an indictment or a conviction on Famous for Freddie's murder. But now that they have that murder weapon, And if they only get one more piece of evidence between the song lyrics, the man's testimony, or the testimony from Kanan or Palomar, and Famous could be very well looking at eating this charge. When being questioned originally by Garcia and Payne, they were trying to get Famous to confess to them, telling him that they could get him a better deal than a lawyer. Then the captain and the FBI agent Tanner came in questioning Famous, asking him about Howard. They went on as far as telling Famous they could get him released on self-defense if Famous was able to give them any information on Detective Howard. But Famous held it down like a G, and again he asked them for his lawyer. But this is where Famous could actually be in trouble. Why? Because episode 1, season 3, Rock and none other than Detective Howard came knocking at Famous's door, telling him to leave so they could talk to Kanan. The fact that Famous could place Howard and Rock together alone makes him a liability or even a loose end in Rock's eyes. If Rock were to get word that Famous was locked up on a murder case and is being questioned by the feds, she might put a hit out on Famous to cover her tracks. This would be Kanan's second close friend that Rock has ordered to put down. She also ordered D-Wiz to be put down in season 1. So if this were to happen, this might cause Kanan and Rock to start back beefing again. I also mentioned in a video I made a few months ago the possibility that Kanan was locked up with Famous in season 1. The man he was playing chess with and he got into a fight with right before getting called to speak to his lawyer. But one thing to keep in mind is the timeline of Power Season 1 was 2014. The current timeline in Raising Kanan is 1992. So this would be 22 years later, which wouldn't be unusual for someone charged with first-degree murder. But the difference is, and the thing to keep in mind is that Famous is only a juvenile and he's a first-time offender, which would most likely get him a reduced sentence. Also, unless he took it to trial and lost, he would most likely get offered a plea deal to take manslaughter charge or something like that. So I personally don't see Famous doing 22 plus years for this crime. Not saying it wasn't Famous who Kanan was locked up with, but most likely if he does get sent to prison, it will be later on near the end of the series and most likely be for more than just one body also. There's also a chance that this could start a cycle of events similar to what Tariq was telling Effie about in Ghost Season 3, where because of this, Famous or possibly even Kanan helping his friend might have to wipe out all the possible witnesses to this crime. Also like we've seen Ghost and Tommy do to cover their own tracks. Because I don't see a main Power character getting written off the show halfway through the series to go to prison. I can't remember any other Power character getting written off the show this same way other than Crystal Ball. So it'd be more likely that Famous were to get killed before going to prison, or he gets locked up and sent to prison at the end of the series. But one key we got to keep in mind is there was never a mention of Famous between Kanan, Ghost, and Tommy in OG Power. And there you have it. Leave your thoughts, theories, and predictions in the comments.